What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of the Bottom Line on Sports. I'm Jean-Jacques Taylor. He's Jeremy Pink, and I got to ask you, is this the best World Series you've seen?
It probably was. It certainly was the best Game 7 that I've seen.
Damn, yeah, okay.
You, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I was going to say best World Series I've seen is probably, I'm dating myself. It's probably that 75 Boston, Cincinnati.
Okay. Well, that was, I remember, do you remember where you were when Carlton Fisk hit that home run? I remember exactly where I was because I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, as you know. Do you know exactly where you were?
No.
Oh, I can remember sitting in my parents' bedroom watching the Carlton Fisk home run on like a 12-inch black and white TV.
Right,
It was late at night for me. It was probably 9:30 at night at the time. I was a
right.
really young kid and losing my mind and thinking that was the single best day of my life ever. Because I was
Now,
a
you know what's
huge
weird about that? I can't remember that, but I remember I remember exactly where I was when Bucky Dent hit the homer against the Red Sox to win the pennant. And that's because I was in the after school lunchroom program, and the guys we used to watch Gilligan's Island and
as
all
you
the
would.
Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
whatever. And the guys, I led a revolt to turn the TV, because there's only one TV, to turn the TV to the baseball game because it was afternoon baseball. And so I led the revolt, and we got the game turned on to the game. All the girls were mad for the rest of the day,
Uh-huh.
but we didn't care. And so I remember that, but I don't remember Carlton Fisk. But I do remember I went through a phase recently, like the last 4 or 5 years. That whole three outcome thing in baseball drove me away. Like I just refused to watch it. It's like it's the most boring sport ever.
Oh,
And I told
you mean basically like a home run, a strikeout,
or walk.
or walk? Yeah, yeah.
That's what baseball became for about 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely.
And the games are 3.5 hours long. It drove me crazy. But I remember texting with one of my boys the other day, and I was like, dude, this game 7 might just bring me back. Because it got everything. It had drama, it had offense, it had defense, it had great pitching, it had timely hitting. It had everything you want in a baseball game. And I was just like, yeah, I might be in, man.
Yeah, and it really shows you what happens if there aren't like a lot of strikeouts there and that everybody isn't swinging for the fences. I even think, if my memory serves me correctly, I even saw a sacrifice bunt happen.
Dude.
Which
And then
I don't think I've seen that since 1997.
now I got off on that because, and this is why it was such a great game. There were so many people talking about so many different things about this game because somebody was like, they lost the series right then. I'm like, really? That lost the series right there? Like, come on, man. They were talking about IKF, who used to play for the Texas Rangers,
Hmm.
didn't get a big enough secondary lead, and that's why he didn't score on the forced play at home. But it was a great game. And then I woke up the next morning. Now, you got to remember, I'm with the Texas Rangers. They won the World Series. I know some of y'all find it hard to believe. They won the World Series 2 years ago. They played in a great World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals in 2011. It wasn't quite this, but it was damn close. It was a great series. But I woke up the next day, and a couple of people, big name people in Dallas, were like, who are big baseball people, they were like, oh, big deal. The Dodgers and their $9 trillion payroll
Hmm.
won the World Series. Who couldn't
Hmm.
have told you that when spring training started? And I
Hmm.
was like, double birds to you, bro. Like the Texas Rangers, you know what I've heard all from the Texas Rangers for the last 3 months is second apron, or we're cutting costs because we don't want to pay the tax. And next year's a rebuilding year, and we're cutting payroll. I was like, the Dodgers want to win, and the Texas Rangers want to make money. So,
Yeah, yeah.
poo on you.
Right. I think what's interesting about this Game 7, to go back to that for a second, is that it had incredibly wide appeal. If you actually look at the TV numbers, the game had 27 million viewers at Game 7 of the World Series. That's like a good performance for an NFL game. Like the season
Right?
opener in the NFL, I think did 28 to 30 million. So people were watching this, and I have as you know, I have two kids who live out in Los Angeles, and we have become kind of I'm a Reds fan my whole life, but I've become a Dodgers fan, because I'm out in LA all the time. I go to the Dodgers games all the time. And both of my kids who had showed little interest in baseball their entire lives
Right?
watched the game. Were both texting me and calling me
Is that
during
right?
the game because they were so riveted by it. And I think that goes to your point. If you get rid of the over abundance of walks and strikeouts and home runs, it actually is a pretty interesting game. And
No,
it was incredible game to watch, Game 7. Just amazing.
now
But
here's the
remember,
question,
hold on a second. But remember, the Blue Jays have like the fifth highest payroll in baseball,
dude.
so they also want to win.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. It was two big market teams. I was like, the Blue Jays aren't some plucky underdog story. One, they won more games than the Dodgers did during the regular season, and two, the Blue Jays had the fifth highest payroll. Dodgers has the second highest payroll. But the thing I was talking about, man, because you have another group that says, oh, they're a bunch of pampered superstars, blase, blase, and they should win because they paid all this money for all these players. The Mets paid a bunch of money for a bunch of players and faded like the proverbial cheap suit down the stretch. And so it matters who you pay. Do you pay guys with intestinal fortitude? Do you pay guys who got some grit to them? Do you pay guys who can show up and perform at the game at winning time, as my dad would have to say? Or do you have guys who crumble at the first sign of adversity? So the Dodgers showed tremendous resilience during that whole game, down 3-0, down 4-2, down 4-3. Some dude who hadn't had a hit in 6 weeks comes off the bench and hits a slider out for a homer to tie it up. It
And
was
makes an
great.
incredible play in the bottom of the inning too, in order to get that force out.
And so my only question is, will baseball be like the Arizona Cardinals of 1999 and screw this thing up? And here's what I mean. The Arizona Cardinals had not won a playoff game in 50 years. They came to Texas Stadium. They beat the Dallas Cowboys 20-7. It was one of the darkest days in Dallas Cowboys history. They had a young quarterback in Jake Plummer. They
And by
had
the
a
way,
good young team.
just as an aside,
Yes.
that's saying something based on watching the Dallas Cowboys game earlier this week. But anyway, go ahead.
Stop. It's
Yeah.
unnecessary.
Yeah.
And what they did in the offseason was they didn't resign any of their key guys. They did a bunch of bad moves, and they went back from being a team full of hope that people were like, "Wow, the Cardinals are about to make a move. Maybe they can become something." They went back to being the irrelevant Cardinals for like a decade. And so, can baseball take advantage of this, or are the owners going to lock everybody out in the spring as two sides argue over $17 trillion, and people just go, "Oh, that was a moment in baseball. Forget them."
Yeah, it's I think that's the key question because the collective bargaining agreement expires in December 1st of next year. So it's got a little over a year to go, which essentially means it's got one full season to go. But
Right.
if you look at history of like the last major baseball strike in the mid 90s, it took years for attendance to recover. It took years for television ratings to recover. Interest in baseball, even until very recently, has never recovered.
Bro.
And it was such a bad look and such a bad move on baseball's part in general that you would think they've got to be crazy. They would never let that happen again. But I got to tell you, the interesting thing is that the main issue that drove the strike, in the 90s was a salary cap. The main issue that's going to cause a work stoppage now, I believe it was a lockout in the 90s, but in any case,
Right.
the main issue that's going to drive a work stoppage this year is also the salary cap. So what's going to happen to baseball? I think that they got to get together and they got to make this thing happen because for the first time in years, baseball has momentum. And the other thing is, baseball has stars for the first time.
Yeah.
Vladimir Guerrero emerges as a star.
Wow.
Shohei's a star.
Yeah.
Yamamoto's a star. It's international. They have the opportunity right now. They just can't blow it.
They got to get over the salary cap thing. I never want to see a salary cap. salary caps are only designed to keep owners from spending all their money. Because owners, if given a choice, will just always spend. And so they need some kind of artificial ceiling in place to stop themselves from spending. Because there's always going to be two or three owners that really want to win, and they'll be like, whatever it takes, we'll do it. And then there's always some other owners like, why are you spending all the money? We don't, that's why are you spending all of that? Because I want to win the championship. Like, pro baseball team, pro basketball team, whatever it is, they cost so much money to own one that if you ain't trying to win a championship, don't buy the thing. No salary cap works just fine in what? The most popular sport in the world. Works just fine. And it don't matter whether you're talking about the Premier League, La Liga in Spain, the Italian league, the French league. They all figure out how to get it done. There's like 8 great teams. There's 7 or 8 in the middle, and there's those ones at the bottom. And every 20 years, Leicester City from the bottom comes up and wins, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened. And soccer is just fine across the world, not a salary cap in sight.
I cannot agree with you more. I think the English Premier League is a great example because the television rights, for example, that the EPL generates are staggering. Are staggering around the world, and the popularity is off the charts around the world. The other thing too is that look at the popularity of college football. College football really in any year only has about 6 or 8 teams that can actually win. And that sport is just growing, leaps and bounds in popularity. I think the NFL is a little bit of a different animal for a whole bunch of reasons. In that, there's very few games in the NFL. There's enforced parity in the NFL, and that has been in sort of that in the DNA of the sport for probably 40 years now, almost 50 years.
Right.
But other sports that are really successful generally are like the EPL. Even basketball now, I think the NBA, because of the change in what they've essentially done is put a hard salary cap in under different language. I think the popularity of the NBA is going to decline a little bit because it's just too expensive to get 3 stars together in one team and actually have a chance to win. And I think you're going to start to see a dwindling in popularity of the NBA because of that. So I'm with you. I think salary caps, you said this to me a while ago. Salary caps, as you just said, protect the owners against themselves. They don't really do much for anybody else.
Yeah, I do. So we'll see what happens with baseball. I thought it was a tremendous World Series. I hope they take advantage of the momentum. I hadn't really thought about what you said in terms of stars, but I think you're right. Whether you're talking about Aaron Judge or I can't remember his name, the catcher in Seattle, Cal.
Oh, Cal, the big dumper Raleigh. I mean,
yeah, Cal Raleigh. He became a star this year.
Yeah, but what the other thing that's great about it is you want to have the great players on the marquee franchises, right?
Yeah.
So now you got Shohei on the Dodgers. You've got Aaron Judge on the Yankees. That's what you want, and that's what really builds and develops these sports and develops their popularity. It will be a shame if there's a work stoppage next year because baseball will lose all of its momentum, and it hasn't
It'll take another 25 years to get back. Bottom line for me.
If it gets back, yeah, go ahead.
Bottom line for me, baseball. Don't mess this thing up, dog. Don't do it. Stay away from the salary cap talk. Players will never, ever go for it.
Bottom line for me is I'm going to do something that, will make you roll your eyes, but I'm going to quote Winston Churchill, who said, study history. In history lies all the secrets of statecraft. And basically take advice from Winston Churchill, who said, don't do what you did last time when baseball had that momentum and you had a work stoppage. Get over it, figure it out, because this is the first time in probably a generation where baseball has a real opportunity to really become part of the national conversation in a way that it hasn't been for maybe 30 years.
Now, one of us quoting Churchill, which means we know right off the rip who went to graduate school at Duke and who didn't go to graduate school at all. Um, Now that leads me to this very question. The Dallas Cowboys played Monday Night Football and showed the world that they aren't any good defensively.
Mhm.
They're a trash team.
Mhm.
The question is, did you have any problem finding the game since ABC and ESPN were taken off of YouTube TV? Or as a cable man, you just say, ha ha ha, I have no problems at all.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. I didn't notice anything last night. However, as you point out, YouTube TV has about 10 million subscribers right now, and probably by the middle or the end of next year, I'm not even sure if you know this, it will be the number one multi-channel television provider. So if you think of satellite, you can get it
Um,
online. Oh, and it'll be ahead of DirecTV, it'll be ahead of Comcast. That's how powerful YouTube TV is.
Let me tell
So
you something, brother. If they don't get ESPN back, I can guarantee you one customer they will not have. And I don't think it's coming back.
oh, I do. I do. I don't think there's any doubt.
Oh, okay. Why do you think it's coming back?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one is the economics behind it for ESPN, and for sort of any cable channel is when you pay your $80 a month or whatever it is
Right,
for YouTube TV, that you're essentially buying via YouTube TV a bunch of smaller subscriptions, right? So
right.
if I'm ESPN, I negotiate with, the YouTube TVs of the world, and YouTube TV pays ESPN a certain number of dollars per subscriber per month. For ESPN, the estimates are around $10 per subscriber per month. Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. If you do the math, and let's say they have about 10 million subscribers of YouTube TV. These are not perfect numbers, but there's an
Right.
illustration. That means it's $10 times 10 million, which is $100 million a month, which is $1.2 billion a year. So I think there's 1.2 billion reasons why ESPN will resolve this.
All right. Well, what's taking so long?
I think it's
Because normally these things go right up to the deadline, and then you say, we figured it out. Don't worry about it. I got you. This one went past the deadline.
yeah, yeah. We had been texting earlier in the week, and I thought it would have been resolved by
I know
Tuesday.
you did.
Yeah, by Tuesday of this week. So I think there's a couple of different dynamics that are going on with this one. Number one is that YouTube is part of Google and YouTube TV is also part of Google.
Right.
Uh, it's important to them, but it's not a deal breaker for them, and they can wait out ESPN.
Ah.
I think they can wait out ESPN more than some of the other
They
organizations
can wait
can.
for them to come to an
Yeah,
agreeable number.
I think there's that. I think the other thing that's tricky about it is that ESPN and most other television networks are offering a direct to consumer product now. The ESPN, you can just go direct. You can bypass cable, you can bypass YouTube TV, and you can
Right.
get ESPN that you've consumed on traditional TV for years. You can get it directly from ESPN. So the YouTube TV is the direct has direct contact with the customer currently if you watch ESPN via that. But a lot of people who subscribe to YouTube TV may be just as apt to subscribe to ESPN directly. So ESPN is thinking, I'm guessing, ESPN probably has the idea that, well, there's another direct to consumer option. Maybe they'll consumers are going to leave YouTube TV, will take ESPN directly.
Right.
YouTube TV is looking at it with a dynamic of, yes, it's important to YouTube TV, but in the grand scheme of Google, it's not necessarily that important. But it is still a great business for ESPN, so they'll resolve it. But it's the dynamics here are a lot trickier than they used to be.
Yeah. I like YouTube TV because of its convenience and it's easy to use. But I'm a TV junkie. I started to think this up the other day. Now I'm embarrassed about this. And so I'm also going to say, don't judge me. Like when you count up how many inches of TVs do you have in your house? Like, if you got 250 inches, you got 100 inches of
Yeah, yeah,
TV.
yeah, yeah.
Like, how
Um,
many have you got?
if I did the math on this, I would guess. Well, let me just guess. I would probably say we are at about 300 inches would be my guess.
That to me sounds normal. I'm at about 900.
My goodness. Is that so? Of it, do you have like one room with four or five large
Yeah,
screens in there? Is that?
I got a room with a 100-inch screen.
Hmm.
Then I got a room that's got 175 and 250s in it.
Hmm.
That's where I do most of my watching.
Right.
And then I've got another in my office. I've got a 65. Now this is where I messed up. In my bedroom, I got a 75. And then we got some other, the kids. I put 50s in theirs. So there's a lot of TVs floating around here. Um, but my point of that was not to talk about how many inches I have,
Hmm. But
but was
nobody wants to know that. Yeah.
but it was really to say I've got a Fire Stick in two or three of them,
Hmm.
and so when YouTube TV went away with ESPN, it just meant okay, I'm gonna watch ESPN on my Fire Stick. Now that limits the rooms I can watch because I don't have it on every TV, and so it wasn't that big. It was more of an inconvenience
Hmm.
about, and the this is like at the top of the line for first world issues. Like I can't
Of
watch it
course.
where in a room where I want to watch it. I got to watch it in a different room
Hmm.
just to have, and then I can't do multi-screen it, so I can only watch one game at a time. So it's more of an inconvenience than anything. But it wasn't so inconvenient that I was like, oh, I got to go buy the ESPN app.
Yeah. It's if you look at it right now, they're going to have to come to an agreement only because there's NFL games on there, and
Yeah,
ultimately, the YouTube TV and ESPN at some point will come together for so they can run the NFL games. I wouldn't be surprised, and again, I don't know anything. I wouldn't be surprised if the resolution to this isn't going to come from Roger Goodell or somebody from his team to say, "Come on, guys, we got to get the NFL. The NFL needs to be in front of everybody. Let's not jeopardize that experience for everybody." And there may be some gentle guidance behind the scenes that we're not aware of.
that's interesting because like you've already got games on Prime. You're already going to have some games on Peacock. And so maybe they just say, hey, I mean, I don't know, because it might just be like, well, you got to make a decision. Otherwise, you just get what we give you, as opposed to having access to all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how again, I don't know how exactly how the contracts are written right now, but this could be the last thing that any network or any distributor wants is to lose access to NFL games. And I
Right.
think that's the one, again, this is my speculation, and my speculation and $3 is probably worth getting you a cup of coffee. But my speculation is that that's ultimately what's going to end up driving this is that somehow the NFL or whether there's a consumer outcry because they can't watch the NFL, or if the NFL says, come on, we don't want to put our product in the middle of one of your disputes.
Right.
Something like there probably will give. But I think you raised a very interesting point, which is that before, maybe 10 years ago, if you didn't have, if your cable system didn't have ESPN on it, you couldn't watch it. Now
Yeah.
you can kind of figure out how to do it pretty easily. So that's probably why there isn't as great of a consumer outcry as you might imagine.
I did the math while we were on the phone. The accurate total is 700 inches worth of TV screens, which is obscene.
Yeah, that's very
Well, you know what
impressive too.
happened is I became very early on in the process a go big or go home guy.
Mhm.
And so that's why my TVs are usually all big, but they've been like that for a while
Well, what
because I
again?
enjoy it.
Yeah, that's not surprising because if you look at television purchases over the last 3 to 5 years, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. People are buying larger and larger and larger screens every year. If you look at the evolution of a smartphone, the evolution of the smartphone went to bigger and bigger and bigger screens over time as well. So the large majority of not the large majority, but a significant percentage of people are buying the 65, 75 and above size television sets these days. And that's definitely a trend for a couple of reasons. One is that people tend to watch and consume more video at home. Uh,
Right.
and also they do it with multiple people around. So you can get 4, 5, 6, 8 people around watching a football game or watching a movie. And
Right.
it's a better experience often than going,
Yeah, it is.
than going to a game or going to a theater.
No, no. Bottom line for me, YouTube TV, you better get your act together, or you won't be in the Taylor household a year from now. That's all I'm gonna say.
The bottom line for me is the consumer is going to pay in the end for this, whether it's through a more expensive direct to consumer option via the ESPN app or other networks apps, or they're going to pay for it by increased fees from YouTube TV. But I do think that the NFL or other leagues are going to come figure out a way, at least quietly behind the scenes, to give some guidance to make this thing go away.
All right, let's move on to Ohio State. And in this case, the only conversation I've been having this conversation with a lot of people lately. The CFP first playoff rankings came out today.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk about whether Indiana would be number one, maybe Alabama or Texas A&M would be number one. As it turns out, Ohio State's number one, Indiana's number two, Texas A&M number three, Alabama's number four. The top four teams all get buys.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my issue, and my issue is really directed, and I say this. Let me see. How do I say this? I say this respectfully to my friends who are Hoosiers. I don't care who's number one in the CFP today. I really don't. I don't really even care that much who's number one when it's all said and done. And here's why. When you got a playoff system, eventually, if you're going to win a championship, you're going to have to deal with Alabama, with Georgia, with Notre Dame, with Texas, with Oregon, with whoever the biggest, baddest people on the block are. You got to deal with them so that we don't have to sit around and have these hypothetical conversations about, oh, if they played, they'd wipe them, or their schedules. You're going to see them all in the playoffs. Tennessee, Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame. You got them all. You had to beat them all. And so, Indiana. I like the fact you blow out all these people. Indiana is still not everybody's biggest game of the year, of their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 3 or 4 years from now, that'll be the case. But Ohio State, just like Alabama, just like Georgia, is everybody's freaking Super Bowl. And it is hard to win when every week you're that team's Super Bowl. That's my rant.
Yeah, it's good. Listen, it's a good rant. It's why, if you give, there's two analogies that I would give to that. One is if you look at the NCAA men's basketball tournament, there's a lot of Cinderellas and it's exciting in the first couple of rounds. But when it comes to the Final Four or the Final Eight, with a few exceptions,
7 of the 8 are blue bloods.
It's blue bloods. It's my Duke Blue Devils. It's Kentucky. It's those teams. That's who ultimately emerges precisely because you got to get through these guys to get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, I also look at the NFL. You see the Chiefs you see the Chiefs and the Bills, advancing in the playoffs year after year after year. You know why? Because they got the best quarterbacks, and you got to beat Mahomes and Josh Allen to make it to a significant run into the whether you're conference championship or the Super Bowl. So it's very analogous to what's happening in college football. The other thing too is that, and again, not a knock against the Hoosiers or anything, but Ohio State has been there before and knows that they have to peak toward the end of the season. Peaking too early is probably not a good idea. They also know that they beat Penn State 38-14. They could have beaten Penn State, 55-7 last week if they wanted to, I think. But they didn't, because this is not about putting up huge numbers week after week. This is about peaking at the right time, building from week to week to week. And that's what I think that the top teams and the top college football teams do, which is why probably keep an eye on Alabama, although they're a little bit funky in terms of consistency. But Alabama has gotten better as the season's gone on. Notre Dame's gotten better as the season's gone on. Ohio State's gotten better as the season's gone on. What do they all have in common? They're all the traditional blue blood teams that everybody's going to have to go through if they want to make it to the college
Um,
football championship.
I think playoffs going to be great this year because obviously I love the Buckeyes, but I see some flaws. I see a couple. Now we're splitting hairs between greatness, but all these teams have some flaws to them, and it's just a matter of will you get matched up against a team that can exploit your flaw? Because you might not. But you know, I think it's going. Yeah, I just think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a bunch of good teams. It's going to be a bunch of
Yeah.
great matchups. It's going to be some teams we don't usually see, whether it's BYU or whether it's Texas Tech. And this is what I mean by we don't have to sit here and have a debate about it. You really think Texas Tech is good? They play in the Big 12. Have they really played anybody who's in?
No.
We don't. It don't matter
Mhm.
because they're going to be the fourth seed or they're going to be whatever, and they're going to have to play one of them bad boys, and then we'll see whether they're real or not.
Yeah, it's like again to sort of belabor the NCAA basketball tournament analogy. When I look at the NCAA tournament every year, I always try to find the teams that have two characteristics to them. One is that, at least in the last 10 years, one is that they're a little bit older, that they're
Yeah,
not a bunch of young players, but number two, that they have a really good point guard. You know, and when I now look at the college football playoff, you have to look at this as if this is like the third or fourth round of the NCAA tournament. So
yeah,
what I look at where I think this college football will be the college football season will be very interesting this year is which teams have the most experience. That's something Ohio State has a lot more younger players this year than they've had in the past.
right.
So I think that's something to look at. But also, who's got the best quarterback, the equivalent of the point guard? And if you look around the country, the best quarterbacks probably are you got Julian Sain from Ohio State, you've got Mendoza from Indiana, you got Dante Moore from Oregon, you've got Ty Simpson from Alabama, and
Yeah.
maybe you got Lake from A&M, maybe you got C.J. Carr from Notre Dame, but that's it. So it's going to come down to teams that kind of have the best quarterback, and also they can couple that with a lot of experience, which is why I actually think Indiana is an interesting team this year because I think the quarterback is one of the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the country, and they actually have a more experienced team than a lot of the other contenders this year.
And they play a style that allows you to win because they're a balanced team, but they can run it and they can be very physical and they can just impose. I mean, they play like an old school Alabama, just not quite as talented,
Well,
which would
they
make
have,
sense.
I think they have, again, you have to see them against a couple of better teams, but I think they have the best offensive line in the country. And that great offensive line play and great running, that works in the playoffs. And I
Yeah,
think they're going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. But all that said, if they were picked off in the first round, that also would surprise me with them.
right. You have to, that whole playoff thing's a different beast. So I'm glad it's out there. I don't really get caught up in it. Bottom line for me is you're gonna have to deal with everybody who's a big boy sooner or later. I'm not really caught up in the CFP rankings. I spend a lot more time just looking to see at my team and see are we built to win when it matters most.
Bottom line for me, just get into the tournament. Once you're into the tournament, if you got a good quarterback and you got an experienced team and I guess and your coach can actually win a big game, you
Yeah.
got a chance. But it's going to come down to the same probably 5, 6 teams with maybe an Indiana encroaching on it this year.
Hey, it's been another great episode of the Bottom Line on Sports. Remember, subscribe, rate, review. Tell us how much you love us. We appreciate it. We're needy like that. And you get your tooth fixed, man. You did a good job
Yeah, yeah.
playing through pain today.
Yeah, I'm playing through pain. I have got a major tooth problem right now, but I've made it through. And anyway, we will see you next week.